If you're interested in a February reading wrap-up that includes books from 2-star to 5-star, a DNF that I got some stuff to say about, and yeah, it was a wild ride. If you're interested in that, stick around. Hi, I'm Danielle, and if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. I hope you'll stick around and check things out, and hopefully you'll subscribe and hang out with me and talk to me down in the comments. I love to be able to chat back and forth, say hello, tell me a little bit something about yourself, and if you have any questions for me, please let me know. And if you are coming back to my channel, thank you so much for returning. You have no idea what it means to me that you take your time to come and watch my videos, so thank you so much for that. Well, it is time for the wrap up for my February reading. You guys, it was something else. I got myself some little notes here, so I'm going to be looking down at those. But I will be showing you the book, but then I'll just kind of pop the cover up on the screen for you so that you can see what it looks like if it's something you're interested in. But let's just go ahead and start with the first book that I read for the month. Now, you saw me choose 4 books, and then I had already had 2 that I had chosen ahead of time. So the first one I read was When You See Me by Lisa Gardner. What I didn't realize is this is actually part of a series, but not totally. Like it can stand alone, but there is this, well, let me just read to the back of you here. Read to the back of you. No, I'll read to the front of you. Or if your back is turned to me, I guess I'm reading to the back of you. I will read the back of the book to you. When female remains are discovered in the hills of Georgia, FBI agent Kimberly Quincy recruits Sergeant Dee Dee Warren and survivor-turned-avenger Flora Dane to join her federal task force. Have they at last unearthed the truth about an infamous killer, or have they opened a door to something indescribably worse? It quickly becomes clear that nothing in the small town is what it seems. Meanwhile, hidden from sight, one young woman fights to stay alive. Robbed of her voice years ago, she has one chance to reach out to Kimberly and Dee Dee, to be seen by someone who can help her, and to exact revenge for all the evil she's witnessed. With the girl's life hanging in the balance, Kimberly and Dee Dee must summon their skills to crack the most disturbing case of their careers, while Flora must confront her own nightmarish past once and for all. Powerful people thought that they could get away with anything. They are about to be proved wrong. Okay, so in saying that, I don't know, in some of the earlier books, maybe this Flora was like her case, what happened to her was kind of in there, and this is kind of wrapping up. I'm not sure. Like I said, I didn't realize it when I started reading it, but as a standalone, it totally was fine also. This book, from the prologue, totally nabbed me. And it starts with someone very young. So if that's a trigger warning to you, something with children, going through something traumatic, just to let you know that. But oh my gosh, I was like drawn in right from that. And then all of the different elements, the different characters, the way they play into this whole case and everything that's going on and the way things wrap up, there were definitely twists I was not expecting. Which is always makes for a great book. I just really thought this was an awesome first read for the month of February. It set me off on such a good foot. So excited for my future reading. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars because it was literally that good. So now that I know this, I'm going to check into more of these books and see, you know, like the ones before it and that kind of thing. Because I think it's like Dee Dee Warren kind of is the main person, the sergeant, or maybe it's Kimberly Quincy, who's the FBI agent. I can't remember exactly, but I did see that there's more with at least one of those characters. So definitely want to check that out, but I really enjoyed this book. I guess I don't need to hold the books up there since I told you that I was going to put them on the screen. And I'm a hand talker, so I will show you and then I'll put it down. So the second book that I read was Dearly Beloved by Wendy Corsi Staub. On a windswept New England island, that already gets me, he waits, fingering the satin and lace wedding gowns he's had made for each of them, the dresses they will wear when he kills them. 3 women have come to the Bramble Rose Inn. For Sandy Cavelli, it's a chance to meet the romantic man who answered her personal ad. Liza Danning hopes to land a publishing deal with a reclusive author. And for Jenny Town, it's an opportunity to get away, even if it means pretending to be her twin sister who won the weekend in a charity raffle. There are 3 women with nothing in common, or so it seems. Now, as a storm bears down on the eerie, isolated inn, 3 women are plunged into a terrifying fight for survival. For someone has chosen them, someone consumed by revenge, someone who wants to have them all for better, for worse, till death do us part. So, Okay, let me just start out by saying this book, the characters, there is such a relatability in the fact that we all have something that is a weak spot for us, or somewhere we're vulnerable, I guess I would say. And the main protagonist of this book plays off of those vulnerabilities of these three women to get them there in the first place. So that already was something that I was like, ooh, that's good writing right there. And then just as you're going through and you're watching things, and the funny thing is this book was written in 1996, and like the whole time I'm like, just call someone, get your phone. They don't have cell phones. Like, it is so weird when you think about things in those terms, like to now that we think of everything like with your phone and ways to contact people and things like that, and like that they didn't have that. It was like boggling my mind, and also made it a fun element as well. But let me tell you, these women, some of them are so infuriating. Some of the things they do, actually all of them in some ways, where you're like, what are you doing? But also the thing where you tell yourself, like, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm being ridiculous in this situation. Maybe it's not really what I am thinking because of my own issues. Girl, if you are feeling something, trust it. Like, God put that there for a reason. And so that's the whole thing with this book. I just was like, oh my gosh, when you're feeling these feelings, do something about it. So that was awesome. I will say there was one element in it that I totally did not understand why the author put there. I thought it was super unnecessary. It was a very twisted relationship between a mom and her son that didn't need to be there. Let's just say that. And so it didn't go into depth about it or anything. There were a couple short snippet things about it, but enough that I was like, really? Did that need to be there? So I will just say that part. But otherwise, that book was dang good. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was That Night by Chevy Stevens. As a teenager, Toni Murphy had a life full of typical adolescent complications: a boyfriend she adored, a younger sister she couldn't relate to, a strained relationship with her parents, and classmates who seemed hell-bent on making her life miserable. Things weren't easy, but Toni could never have predicted how horrific they would become until her younger sister was brutally murdered one summer night. Toni and her boyfriend Ryan were convicted of the murder and sent to prison. Now 34, Toni is out on parole and back in her hometown, struggling to adjust to a new life on the outside. She's doing everything in her power to avoid violating her parole and going back, but nothing is making that easy. Not Ryan, who is convinced he can figure out the truth, not her mother, who doubts Toni's innocence, and certainly not the group of women who made Toni's life hell in high school and may have darker secrets than anyone realizes. No matter how hard she tries, ignoring her old life to start a new one is impossible. Before Toni can truly move on, she must risk everything to find out what really happened that night. But the truth might be the most terrifying thing of all. And again, so this was set in, this actually, I think the other one was 1996. Now I'm questioning myself, but I felt like it was. Yeah, 1996. Okay, and then this one was, like, the book was not written in 1996. This is from 2014, but it jumps around in time from 2012 to 2010. I mean, it's jumping around through the timeline. So if that's something you have a hard time with, I mean, they lay it out very easily for you. The chapters change, so it's not like it's just bouncing around in the same chapter and you don't know. Like 1998, I believe 1996 though. Yeah, 1996. So they were seniors in high school in 1996. Well, I was a senior in high school in 1996. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can relate so much to the music they talked about, the clothes that people wore, just different stuff. It was exactly what I was wearing, listening to my friends, that kind of stuff in 1996. So that was a really fun aspect of that book that I wasn't expecting. But like I said, it jumps around in timeline from 1996 when all of this stuff started happening to present day. Then it goes back a little bit because it's kind of telling about her time in prison before she got out, that kind of stuff and things that go on. It is so heartbreaking because it's watching this young girl who was just being a normal teenager, her and her boyfriend, and had this really cute relationship, and seeing them be accused of something they absolutely did not do by this group of people who just had jealousy issues and there was some other stuff going on, which you'll find out later, which I have to say, I did kind of start to put together maybe what the situation was probably about 2/3 of the way through the book, but that did not change how good it was for me, because I think the author did an awesome job of the way that they put it together. But it was really hard to just watch, like, it's these innocent kids who get sent to prison for something they didn't do, and how prison changes them so much and just changes everything in their lives. And you're watching the relationship with Tony and her mom when she's, you know, in high school, and just they're butting heads, but it's normal teenage stuff. But it's things that you're watching, and now as a mom and having gone through teenage years, however, I did have boys, not girls, so it was different. But still seeing some of the things that, like, you keep pressing on that they don't want to talk to you about, and then, like, in your parenting and your care for your kids, you want, you know, to be involved in ways that sometimes they don't want you to be. So there was like this, watching that was like kind of a heartstring puller for me, because, you know, I can relate to it. And then also then when things happen with her sister, that her mom doesn't believe her, like believes maybe she did do it. And so just how heartbreaking that is. And so just the damage done to this family and these kids, and now as adults trying to figure out what actually happened and to clear their names, and it's a wild ride. So I loved this book. I gave this 4.5 stars as well. Here's where things started going downhill. I read this book, Vanished, by Catherine Mackle. Okay. After a bomb explodes in a working-class neighborhood of Barchester, Massachusetts, Police Sergeant Jason Logan fights to keep order and assist the injured while desperately waiting for aid to arrive. Is the mist from the bomb preventing ambulances and fire trucks from coming in, or has something far more dire occurred? As the hours tick by, Logan tracks the terrorist mastermind, who he learns is not done wreaking havoc. Cut off from modern medical resources, nurse practitioner Kaya de los Santos treats the injured and soothes the fearful, unaware that her teenage son Ben is on the run from both the cops and the terrorists. The Vanished begin a battle for survival against enemies they've always known and forces they've never even imagined. Okay, sounds good, right? I didn't know going into this, but it's actually a Christian chiller, it's called. And so I was like, oh good, I'm a Christian. And I was hoping to kind of dip my toe into kind of this genre, right? I don't think this was the book to do it in. Some of the characters I really liked. Some it seemed very forced. There's like these thugs kind of, but like the way the dialogue just seems very forced. So it felt a little corny there. There's some things that just feel so disjointed about this story. And I don't even know how to explain it really, because there's some relationships and things going on that, like, okay, there's connections and you could see it and like appreciate it, but then there's things that are very disjointed. Like there's several different kind of stories going on within it. Well, when I got to the end and the way it left off, I was like, excuse me, what? Like, do you ever read a book and you get to the end and you're like actually mad that you spent the time reading it, because you're like, that is what I spent all this time reading this to end up with? Well, the thing with that is I went and looked, and it's supposed to be part of a series, the first book in a series. Okay, that makes sense then. I can let go of some of the things that were like kind of weird about it, and then go, okay, these things are going to start tying together because it's part of a series. Only there were never any more books written in this series. And this book was, I think it was 2007. Yeah, 2007. So we do not have another book since 2007. So given that, I don't think there's ever going to be more in the series, because that would be a heck of a long time in between. And it just so frustrated me that I spent that time reading that book. And then, like I said, some of the little things in it that just weren't the greatest of writing, it was kind of disappointing. So I gave that book a 2-star. It just really, without there being things coming behind it, I don't know how you could give it anything higher. So that was my first wah 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 of the month. Now I'll pop in here and say also Heaven by Randy Alcorn was on my TBR for February. You'll see this is only how far I am for a reason. This is like a book that I want to read slowly. I'm highlighting things. I'm really paying attention to, putting a lot of thought into, because it is something that evokes a lot of thought. Anyway, it just this book is so good, you guys. I said, I'm not really going to talk about it right now because I will literally do probably a full video on this book when I finish with it. I'm actually going to be meeting with my best friend to talk about it. She's a pastor, actually. And I keep telling her, I'm like, I'm reading that book and it's so good. It's like rocking my world. She's like, totally. And so I'm like, I want to get together and talk about it. She's like, let's do it. So I plan to have a total discussion with her about it. So I will have input from her to be able to share and all that. So I won't say anything more about it right now than that, but oh, so good. So this is going to be a continuing however long it takes. It'll just keep going month to month or whatever, because I read it after I do my Bible reading in the morning. So I am loving it. Now we get to the book. If I thought I was annoyed with Vanished, oh, that was nothing. So this is The Footprints of God by Greg Iles. Trinity. The government's top secret supercomputer is an intelligence beyond comprehension and a nightmare beyond humanity's worst fears. At the heart of a maelstrom of limitless science and ruthless ambition, Dr. David Tennant, Project Trinity's ethicist, harbors a lethal secret. He knows who murdered a fellow scientist. Fleeing for his life alongside psychiatrist Rachel Weisz, the only hope for survival lies in revealing the shocking connection between Trinity's apocalyptic power and David's tortured mind. Mankind's future hangs in the balance, and the price of failure is extinction. Okay. This book, the idea of it, creating this computer that uses someone's actual, like, their brain to be able to run things and become, like, almost an entity of its own. Trippy, creepy, like, all the makings for a very good story, right? The characters are awesome in this book. I mean, oh my gosh. So kind of toward the beginning, there was an element that I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna like let it go. Because he was sort of seeing things like these dreams. He was having these dreams. And he was almost seeing himself as Jesus, like doing things that Jesus did. And we're talking about things that are biblical, that Jesus did actually do, but then also adding in stories that are not in the Bible. And so I'm like, that I don't play around with stuff like that. So I was like, okay. Then I kind of moved away from that. So I'm like, I'm going to sort of just ignore that part and hopefully that kind of just goes away. So I am reading this book. Do you guys see? I finally at page 422 of 546 said, absolutely not. So I got that far in that book and was like, I cannot do this anymore. Because the absolute lies, I don't care if it's a book or not, and if it's fiction and you're just trying to tell a story, but when you are saying things that are so unbiblical about God, I cannot keep reading that, and I would never recommend it to anyone. I was super disappointed with that. Like, I know The Footprints of God, and Trinity was the name of the computer. And the way he was talking about it, like them realizing that actually they're creating something evil. So like that's like where this was all going was fine as far as that. But then the stuff he started to say, I could not be on board with that. And so I would never recommend this to anyone. I obviously will be unhauling it. And I started looking into some of his other books because I had read Third Degree by him and I really, really liked it, which is why I picked up some other ones from him. There's another one that I ended up realizing is part of a series, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that one. And then the other one seems like it might be okay, so I'll try that one. But if it's anything that has these types of scenarios or this type of content, I will not read any more of his books because I was super disappointed with that. So if you're a Christian, I would say steer clear of this book because if you read it, you will not be happy. Yeah, so that's a DNF. It's getting out of here. I don't even want it in my house. Why would I keep it? I'm not going to read it. But so that I'm not giving any stars to because I did not even finish it. But that's how it goes sometimes. So since I didn't end up finishing that book and I still had some time in the month for some more reading, I decided to go ahead and read something else. And so I ended up, you may have seen, I went shopping with my husband on Valentine's Day at Barnes & Noble. I did a little vlog, a video, so I will put that up in the cards for you if you want to check it out. But I picked up Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. So Jane Eyre is my favorite book of all time. Love it. I read Jane Eyre. So again, it's a 5-star read for me. At Thornfield Hall, where she takes employment as a governess, Jane Eyre finds fulfillment in her work and the love of her life in her employer, Edward Rochester. When a dark secret from Rochester's past comes to light, Jane must make the most difficult decision of her life: to stay beside the man she loves, regardless of the truth, or to embark upon a new life free of encumbrances of the past. So good for me. I have always loved this book from the time I read it in high school. It kind of goes through 3 separate main parts of her life, and just the way things are described, and like I can feel her torment, and I can just like, it's like heartbreaking to me. And then things where you feel like these relationships she has with some different people, and you can just feel like that warmth and the imagery, the atmosphere, so dang good. And then like the crazy element to it, if you have not read it, I highly recommend it, about a part of it that's just like totally out of control, and it's just so good. I've read it, this was my 4th time reading it. I know I'll read it again someday. It's just one of those books that I go back to. It's like a comfort, you know what I mean? And I absolutely love it. It's a classic, and if I was gonna recommend somebody to read a classic, that's the one I would tell them first. Maybe that's not what I should do, but that's the one that just gets me. And so I love Jane Eyre. 5-star read every time. And then since there's a new Hunger Games book coming out, I was like, you know what? I want to reread the Hunger Games. So I went ahead and I have this book, and I picked up my own book. That's why it looks rough like this. My son actually read this too, so that's actually probably more why it looks like that. But I went ahead and reread the first Hunger Games book. In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to dead before, and survival, for her, is second nature. Without really meaning to, she becomes a contender, but if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. So good again. So many things that now I catch more that I've read it the second time. And it was a super quick read to me, and it took me a little over a day. My husband's like, how in the heck do you do that? Well, it's not that long of a book, and it's just so good. And just the ideas in this book are so, like totally disgusting, totally like infuriating, but such a like crazy good idea. Like to have this in your mind to write books like this is just astonishing to me. But so I love the Hunger Games. I literally actually realized that I've only read the first 3. So I hadn't even read the 4th book yet. So I will definitely want to pick that up after I read the next 2 and then get the newest one. So that is a 5-star read to me. It was the first time I read it, and it was again this time. And so I'm glad that I decided to reread that series in preparation for the new one coming out. So that's a wrap up of my reads for February. So I had 2 4.5s, a 4, a 2, a DNF, and 2 5-stars. So I think that is dang good for February. I mean, I ran the full gamut of like real good to real not good. And so I would say that's a pretty successful reading month. So let me know what you think. Have you read any of these books? What do you think of them? And is there anything that I talked about that you're like, I'm going to pick that book up now because it sounds really good? Or I will never touch that book because it doesn't sound good. But anyway, thank you guys so much for taking your time to watch. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you back for, well, I mean, there'll be other videos in between, but we'll see what my March reads end up being like. I'm hoping good. I mean, is anyone ever hoping that they're not? That's kind of a dumb thing to say. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.